They called us background noise. A biological curiosity crawling on a blue dot, too insignificant to conquer, yet perfect to exploit. The Varn Dominion turned Earth into a training ground. Their young cadets earned combat badges by hunting what they thought were feral creatures, pretending to be soldiers. We were the joke. The simulations ran for decades. Our resistance was called entertainment. Orbital drop exercises, full-fire mock invasions, stealth drills using human cities as Mazicit was sport. Every time we scrambled jets or launched countermeasures, they laughed. Not because we were brave, but because we were predictable. Galactic Council had a term for us: Involuntary Simulation Zone Alpha. That was Earth's new name. Our skies flickered with alien engine trails, our oceans tracked with discarded probes, protests from Earth-Sun unread, sanctions meaningless. They didn't fear us, they didn't even respect us. One Varn general, addressing a group of cadets, said, "There's more threat in a malfunctioning food replicator than in 10 Terran platoons." And yet, they kept disappearing. Not all of them. It's just a few, at first search parties that never returned. Outposts that went dark. Audio logs ending mid-sentence. Explanations varied. Environmental hazards, terrain irregularities, stress-induced, hallucinations, and none dared to call it what it was: retaliation. In Siberia, a Varn skirmish team was meant to disable a satellite station. Instead, only fragments of their dropship were ever found, embedded in the ice. The transmission logs revealed something odd: localized EMP bursts, followed by a manual override of their containment gear. No known Terran equipment could have done it. They called it a fluke. Then it happened again and again. Patterns formed. Too irregular to be mechanical, too deliberate to be chance. Still, the Dominion laughed. Terrans evolve like molasses. Set a broadcast. Let them tinker. They'll electrocute themselves before they reach fusion drives. They underestimated how dangerous a joke can become when it knows it's being laughed at. One night, a Dominion drone crashed in the jungles of the Congo. When recovery units arrived, they found it stripped, clean wiring gone, core harvested, navigation wiped. Whoever took it knew how to extract alien hardware without triggering failsafes. No human labs had that knowledge, at least not officially, Commander. Threx reviewed the incident and wrote in his report, "If they're learning, it's through sheer trial, pain, and madness. But worse, it's working." Still, the Council scoffed. Earth was still level 2 on the Galactic Threat Index, barely above. Livestock. But something was shifting. Terran communication nodes began encrypting at speeds far above their last known capability. Old satellites stopped transmitting, placed by low-frequency pulses nobody could decipher. The Dominion's mistake wasn't that they invaded, it was that they gave us time. Time to watch, time to steal, time to adapt. The last captured Varn soldier, asked what happened to his platoon, said only this before going silent: "We taught them how we fight." They started asking why we fight like that. He never spoke again. Asterisk, the first real signal that something had changed came not from space, but from the silence on Earth. Surveillance arrays that once blinked with Dominion oversight suddenly stopped. Transmitting their relay drones vanished. The satellites didn't go down, they were repurposed, hijacked the Terran Accord. A unified force born not of diplomacy but shared humiliation had formed in secret. For the first time in history, Earth had one voice, not for peace, but for payback. We didn't have fleets, we had scrapyards. We didn't have plasma rifles. We had repurposed coil guns and microwave cannons rigged from weather stations. We lacked in elegance, we made up for in rage and improvisation. Our scientists denied access to interstellar databases, started reverse engineering captured tech using trial, error, and desperation. Within months, old Earth telescopes combined with stolen Dominion navigational arrays, cracked the math behind FTL drift. We didn't mimic alien systems, we rewrote them. Varn Command started noticing anomalies. Tire training zones went dark without warning. Surveillance footage corrupted. Patrols returned early, reporting traps, improvised electromagnetic bursts, terrain manipulations, and weapons that shouldn't exist. Dominion Marines trained for every known species, but not for humans. Not for fighters who baited you with their own blood, grinned through broken jaws, and used their fallen as decoys. They tried diplomacy. They sent envoys. None returned. Not because we killed them, but because they stayed. We showed them our cities, our wounded, our children learning alien language just to decode Dominion tactics. Some aliens wept, others defected. The line between enemy and witness blurred. In orbit above Europa, Dominion scout ship found itself deadlocked, not by missiles, but by falsified AI protocols. Their own systems, subtly rewritten, looped combat commands into standby mode. They were boarded not by a fleet, but by 6 Terran engineers in patched-up vacuum suits. One carried a crowbar. Another had nothing but a neural disruptor built from a microwave emitter. They took the ship, left a message etched into its hull. We are your simulation. See if you can survive it. Galactic analysts still debated how Earth advanced so quickly. Some accused them of stealing forbidden tech. Others whispered darker theories that humans had always been hiding their potential, waiting. But those theories were wrong. What changed wasn't our knowledge, it was our intent. We stopped trying. To catch up, we stopped copying. We started breaking the rules. We stopped asking, how do they do this? And started asking, how do we make this worse? A Dominion strategist finally said it aloud in a closed chamber. They're not fighting to win. They're fighting to become something we can't predict. He was right. And from that moment on, Dominion training manuals were rewritten. Not to defeat humans, but to avoid them. The Dominion's response was as expected, swift, brutal, and arrogant. They deployed a stabilization fleet to orbit Earth, backed by dreadnoughts and AI overseers. The message was clear: kneel or be silenced. But when they arrived, there was nothing to destroy. No military formations, no energy signatures, no orbital resistance. Just silence. Then the dreadnoughts began to blink out one by one, not from weapons fire, but from within. The first ship lost its gravity. Artificial systems inverted, and crew members floated into the ship's own defense turrets before emergency protocols kicked in. By then, it was too late. Blackout. The second ship's AI core suffered a cascading failure after receiving a signal that mimicked its own. Maintenance code except with a single altered variable that triggered a full system wipe. A signal no species should have known. It came from Earth. Fleet Command scrambled for answers. They assumed a traitor, a saboteur, some internal virus. But the truth surfaced quickly. The Terrans had been studying alien systems for decades, piece by piece, failure by failure. They didn't copy, they corrupted. They learned how things were meant to work so they could build things that shouldn't. And they'd unleashed it all at once. Across Dominion-controlled space, remote relay stations received the same message in over 100 languages. We're not coming to invade. We're coming to return what you gave us. Seconds later, their network collapsed under a recursive loop of junk code, stolen frequencies, and psychological triggers embedded in their own propaganda broadcasts. Entire fleets were forced into manual mode. AI cores were disconnected. Ships collided in orbit. Chaos spread. It wasn't war, it was reprogramming. A new term entered military briefings: ghost fleets. Dominion crews reported sightings of unmarked vessels that didn't show up on scans, moved without propulsion, and never fired a shot. Yet wherever they passed, installations failed, commanders disappeared, morale fractured. Dominion analysts tried to trace them but failed. Some suggested they weren't real ships, just psychological weapons floating reminders that Earth had rewritten the rules of conflict. In response, the Dominion declared martial law in 6 systems and banned all Terran origin signals. But it was too late. By then, over a dozen alien colonies had openly requested Terran protection. It's not out of loyalty, but out of fear. Humanity had done the unthinkable. They had made every other empire realize that the old playbook no longer applied. On Trillia Prime, a Terran scout ship disabled a Varn flagship with no weapons. It simply accessed the enemy's targeting protocols mid-battle, flooded them with nonsense, and left. No casualties. It's just a simple message left behind. You trained us for war. You never taught us what to do once we learned. The galaxy shifted. It's not because humans had more ships or stronger weapons, but because for the first time, every alien power realized humanity wasn't just another player in the game. They were rewriting it. Asterisk. No one laughed anymore. The name, Terran Accord, no longer sparked ridicule. It triggered silence. In diplomatic circles, Earth's representatives were now given the final word in every negotiation, not by tradition, but by fear. No one wanted to speak after the humans, not because they were eloquent, but because their words often preceded. Action, treaties signed in their presence, never got broken, not once. The Dominion pulled back. Border worlds fortified themselves. Empires that once ruled with confidence began rewriting their military doctrines not to replicate human tactics, but to survive them. A single human cruiser spotted in a system could cause full-scale evacuations. Even AI war algorithms refused. To simulate human war scenarios, they couldn't process the unpredictability. They couldn't replicate the madness. Humans didn't conquer in the traditional sense. They didn't raise flags or build palaces. They landed quietly, dismantled tyrannies, gave locals the means to defend themselves, and left just as silently. On dozens of worlds, resistant cells emerged from nowhere, armed with tactics that bore the fingerprints of Earth. Some alien leaders called it infection. Others called it inspiration. The truth didn't matter. The effect did. Alien children whispered about the Terran ghosts, the ones who laughed through pain, who never surrendered, who fought smarter, not cleaner. Soldiers trained with makeshift traps and blindfolds, mimicking Terran unpredictability. It never worked. Because what made humans dangerous wasn't something you could teach. It was something you had to endure. Above a scorched moon, once home to a Varn stronghold, a black Terran dropship hovered in silence. No insignia, no lights. Just a single word etched onto its hull. Remember, the survivors below didn't need an explanation. Everyone knew what came next. In a hidden chamber, far from the core worlds, former Commander Threx lived in self-imposed exile. He watched the stars flicker and fade on old maps, each one a graveyard of assumptions. When asked once what went wrong, he only said, "We tested them for sport, and they took the test seriously." No one asked again. One day a young Varn cadet, fresh out of simulation, reviewed a briefing on historical galactic threats. He raised his hand. "Are the humans still at war?" His instructor paused, uncertain, then responded, "They don't call it war." "Then what do they call it?" He shook his head. Correction. That's what humanity had become. Not an empire, not a rival, but the consequence. The answer to unchecked arrogance. The one species you didn't provoke, not because they'd destroy you immediately, but because they wouldn't stop. They'd learn you, adapt to you, and then, quietly, they'd end you. Not with pride, not with ceremony, with certainty.